Somewhere in the wetlands between Maine and Florida, along streams and creek banks across the American East, grows a plant that feeds itself without fertilizer, fixes the nitrogen in the soil, survives droughts that devastate wheat fields, and produces protein-rich underground tubers year after year without anyone replanting it. Most Americans have never heard of it. Their government never funded research into it. Agricultural corporations deliberately buried it from public consciousness. Yet this native plant contains 3 times more protein than potatoes and sustained entire civilizations for thousands of years before Europeans ever set foot on this continent. If you're watching Nature's Forgotten World for the first time, Wyatt here. This story reveals how agriculture works and why certain crops live while others disappear. If you want to understand how systems of power control what we eat, hit that subscribe button right now. Share this with someone who cares about food independence. The algorithm needs your engagement to spread this message. Travel back in time with us, from the Great Lakes down to the Gulf Coast, from the Atlantic shoreline stretching west to the Great Plains. Archaeological sites across eastern North America reveal something remarkable. One particular plant appears again and again in the historical record, in seeds stored for winter, in food preparation areas, in trade networks that connected distant communities. The Wampanoag called it hopniss. The Iroquois relied on it so heavily that French explorers in the 1600s documented an entire group of people based on their cultivation of these tubers. They called them the potato people, creating detailed illustrations showing this crop as the foundation of their entire food supply. The Lenape, the Shawnee, the Cherokee, the Miami, the Potawatomi, the Fox Nation, and the Chippewa, all of them grew this plant. All of them built complex agricultural systems around it. Their preparation methods showed sophisticated culinary knowledge. They roasted these tubers over open fires, creating crispy, nutty flavors. They boiled them into hearty stews that warmed families through harsh winters. They fried them in animal fat until the outside became golden. They sliced them thin and dried them in the sun, creating preserved food that lasted through the coldest months. They ground the dried pieces into flour, making bread that could sustain a family when fresh food disappeared. This was not a supplement. This was the foundation. Subscribe to Nature's Forgotten World and see how ancient food systems actually functioned. What many people miss is that indigenous peoples did not simply gather wild plants. They actively managed entire landscapes through controlled fire. They strategically moved plant materials to new locations. They selectively harvested in ways that encouraged future growth. European observers could not recognize this as farming because it did not resemble the rigid fields and straight lines they had brought from the Old World. This represented thousands of years of accumulated knowledge. Generations refined techniques. Communities passed down methods that worked with natural systems instead of fighting against them. The result was landscape management so sophisticated that early European visitors mistook it for wilderness, when in reality it was carefully tended agricultural land. The year is 2020. English colonists arrive in Massachusetts, unprepared and starving. Their survival depends on luck and help. Their European crops fail in unfamiliar soil. Their livestock die from cold and unknown diseases. They possess no knowledge of North American winters or how to prepare for them. People are dying. The Wampanoag people showed the colonists groundnut. They taught them to find it, dig it, prepare it, cook it. Written documents are explicit about this. Written documents credit groundnut and other foods that the local environment provided with keeping the colonists alive through those first brutal years. That famous harvest celebration in 1621 almost certainly included groundnut tubers prepared alongside venison and wild birds. The colonists survived because they received knowledge from indigenous peoples. They owed their lives to a plant they would eventually try to erase. For the next 3 centuries, European settlers systematically dismantled indigenous agricultural knowledge. They replaced it with their own crops, Those imported plants required more labor, more land clearing, more intensive management. They demanded control in ways that groundnut never would. Groundnut did not disappear because it failed. It disappeared because it succeeded outside the system colonizers were building. Like our Nature's Forgotten World channel on YouTube. Support creators sharing hidden history by sharing this video and leaving comments. Let's examine the actual science. Apios americana is a perennial legume vine. It grows 3 to 5 meters long, climbing through wetlands and along stream banks. Its native range stretches from southern Canada down through Florida and west into the Dakotas and Colorado regions. The edible parts are tubers, underground storage organs that form along underground stems like beads threaded onto a string. A single mature plant, with even basic care, produces over 2 kilograms of tubers per growing season. Stop reading and subscribe to Nature's Forgotten World for more content like this. The nutritional profile is genuinely remarkable. These tubers contain 11 to 20% protein on a dry weight basis. That means 2 to 3 times the protein found in potatoes. They contain every essential amino acid. This is rare in root crops, a complete protein that rivals animal sources. Beyond protein, they're packed with iron, calcium, magnesium, complex carbohydrates, and dietary fiber. A root crop that functions as a complete nutritional source, a winter storable plant, a perennial that needs no replanting, a nitrogen-fixing crop that actually improves the soil while growing. From any logical food system perspective, this should have revolutionized modern agriculture. A climate-resilient native crop with superior nutrition, 0 fertilizer requirements, 0 pesticide needs. It survives conditions that kill commercial crops. Yet modern agriculture looked at groundnut and saw a threat. Here's the explicit answer to why groundnut was buried. Understand these barriers, and you understand why agriculture works the way it does. First, you cannot patent it. Apios americana has been cultivated for thousands of years. It exists in the public domain. No intellectual property protection exists, no genetic modification to license, no proprietary variety to sell at premium prices. The plant cannot be owned. Second, you cannot sell herbicides for it. Groundnut is a nitrogen-fixing legume. It outcompetes most weeds naturally through its growing patterns. There is no herbicide market to capture. Chemical companies lose money. Third, you cannot sell fertilizer for it. The plant fixes nitrogen from the air. It grows in poor, waterlogged soils where other crops fail. There is no fertilizer dependency to create. Fertilizer manufacturers earn nothing. Fourth, you cannot sell specialized equipment for it. Standard potato harvesters, multi-million-dollar machines designed for uniform, clustered tubers, cannot function. The groundnut's tubers spread along meters of underground stem. Equipment tears through the soil, damages the thin-skinned tubers, and leaves half the harvest behind. Manual harvesting works, but requires 40 to 60 labor hours per hectare. At industrial scale, that makes the crop uncompetitive against mechanized operations. Sixth, you cannot create seed dependency. Farmers can save tubers and replant them indefinitely. Every tuber is a seed. No hybrid vigor is lost. No terminator genes enforce dependency. No annual seed purchases exist to extract profits from farming families. The fundamental problem is simple. You cannot build a profitable business model around a plant that does not need you. And that is precisely why groundnut had to be buried. The erasure was not accidental, it was strategic. Banning groundnut outright would be too obvious, would draw too much attention. Instead, it was quietly defunded, removed from agricultural extension programs, kept out of university curriculums, erased from public consciousness so thoroughly that people living where it grows wild have never heard of it. In the 1980s, the USDA and Louisiana State University actually launched a serious groundnut breeding program. They collected wild plants from across Eastern America. They selected for larger tubers, more concentrated growth, better clustering, higher yields. They identified promising lines producing tubers approaching 5 pounds per plant. They documented yield data showing groundnut could produce 4,000 to 6,000 pounds of high-protein tubers per acre with minimal inputs. Compare that to potatoes, which average 3,500 pounds per acre while requiring intensive fertilizer, pesticide, and irrigation management. Groundnut was outperforming potatoes both nutritionally and agronomically, using a fraction of the inputs. Then, in the mid-1990s, funding ended. The program shut down completely. No major seed company picked up the research. No agricultural corporation scaled it to commercial production. The research stopped not because groundnut failed. It stopped because groundnuts succeeded in ways that made it worthless to the people controlling agriculture. Despite being completely abandoned by modern agriculture, despite zero research funding, despite the total absence of commercial infrastructure, groundnut still grows. It still produces tubers every fall. It still fixes nitrogen and improves soil. It still offers the same nutrition that sustained indigenous peoples for thousands of years. It grows wild along streams in every state from Maine to Florida, from the Atlantic coast to the Dakotas. It does not need modern agriculture. It never did. And that is the fundamental threat. The only place groundnut has been grown as a true commercial crop for any sustained period is not in North America, where it is native. It is in Japan. Groundnut was introduced to Japan in the late 1800s or early 1900s, probably as an ornamental plant. Japanese farmers did what American agriculture refused to do. They treated it as food. Today, Apios americana is cultivated primarily in Aomori Prefecture. They call it America hodoimu, the American potato bean. Farmers sell the tubers as a regional specialty in local markets. Food companies process them into flour, snack foods, and baked goods. Japanese producers treat groundnut as a premium, high-value crop. They accept hand labor because they price it as functional food, not bulk commodity. It works. But in North America, where groundnut is native, where it fed entire nations, where it saved colonists from starvation, it remains almost completely marginalized. Not because Americans will not eat it, because the infrastructure to profit from it does not exist, and no corporation will build that infrastructure when they cannot control the plant. Knowledge does not die completely. It survives in the margins. It persists in communities that refuse erasure. Researchers at Iowa State University maintain one of the few active groundnut breeding collections in North America. They have developed genomic tools, transcriptome-based linkage maps, and molecular markers to accelerate selection for traits like tuber size, clustering, and disease resistance. They conduct the work that should have been funded decades ago on shoestring budgets because they understand what groundnut represents. Cherokee communities in Oklahoma are replanting hopniss in tribal gardens as part of food sovereignty and cultural revival projects. Elders who remember their grandparents cooking groundnut are teaching younger generations how to grow it, harvest it, and prepare traditional dishes. The knowledge survived colonialism. It survived the Green Revolution. It is surviving the corporate consolidation of the seed industry. Permaculture practitioners across North America are integrating groundnut into food forests and polyculture systems where its perennial nature and nitrogen-fixing ability are assets, not obstacles. European researchers have begun trialing groundnut in the UK and Northern Europe, proposing it as a climate-resilient, high-protein root crop for sustainable food systems. Nutritionally, it works. Agronomically, it works. Ecologically, it works. What does not work is forcing it into the industrial commodity model that dominates modern agriculture. This reveals something critical about how agriculture actually functions. The crops grown today are not chosen because they are the most nutritious, not because they are the most resilient, not because they are the best for soil health or climate adaptation. They are chosen because they are the most profitable for the corporations controlling agriculture. Crops requiring annual seed purchases receive research funding. Crops needing chemical inputs receive government subsidies. Crops demanding expensive machinery receive infrastructure investment. Crops that do not require any of that get marginalized, defunded, and forgotten, even when they are nutritionally superior, ecologically sound, and climately resilient. Groundnut is not a failure of agriculture. It is an indictment of the system itself. Indigenous peoples knew this plant could sustain large populations. They built food systems around perennials, nitrogen-fixing crops, low-maintenance plants that worked with the land instead of extracting from it. Those systems supported large, healthy populations for thousands of years without depleting soil, without fossil fuel inputs, without corporate dependency. Europeans arrived with a different vision: annual monocultures, plowed fields, enclosed land, commodified seeds, centralized control. That system eventually dominated, not because it produced better food or healthier ecosystems, but because it was better at concentrating wealth and power. Groundnut did not fit, so it was pushed aside, not eliminated, which would require too much effort and draw too much attention, just marginalized, defunded, erased from the narrative, made invisible. But the plant is still here, still growing wild along streams and wetlands, still producing 2 kilograms of protein-rich tubers per plant every fall, still fixing nitrogen and improving soil. And the knowledge is still here, in tribal communities reclaiming ancestral foods, in permaculture networks experimenting with perennial staples, in researchers developing genomic tools for underutilized crops, in backyard gardeners planting hopniss in food forests because they understand another kind of agriculture is possible. Every person who learns that this native plant outperforms potatoes nutritionally represents a crack in the corporate narrative. Every farmer who discovers groundnut produces 6,000 pounds per acre with zero inputs represents lost profit for seed companies, fertilizer manufacturers, and equipment dealers. Every garden where groundnut thrives without chemicals is proof that the industrial model is not inevitable. It is a choice that serves corporations, not eaters. They will not commercialize groundnut because they cannot control it. They will not fund large-scale research because there is no patent to protect. They will not develop harvesting infrastructure because profit margins do not justify investment. But that does not mean groundnut is not valuable. It means the system is designed to reject value that cannot be commodified. Groundnut works. It always has. It fed indigenous nations for thousands of years. It saved English colonists from starvation. It still grows, still produces, still offers everything promised from modern agriculture: resilience, nutrition, sustainability, soil health. The only thing it does not offer is profit for major chemical corporations, seed companies, equipment manufacturers, and agricultural conglomerates. And that is why most people have never heard of it. This story is simple. This plant feeds people abundantly, sustainably, without asking permission from corporations or governments. And that is why systems of power want everyone to forget it exists. But that will not happen. The truth is visible now. The question becomes, what other crops have been buried by industrial agriculture because they could not be controlled or commodified? What foods did your ancestors eat that have completely disappeared from modern diets? What plants are growing wild right now that could revolutionize food systems if someone allowed it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this video with people who care about food independence. Subscribe to Nature's Forgotten World for more suppressed crops, forgotten knowledge, and the economic forces that decide what ends up on plates and what gets erased from history. Every like and every share helps preserve this knowledge. Every comment strengthens the community of people who understand how agriculture really works. Thank you for watching. The plant is still growing, the knowledge is still alive, and the choice about the future of food remains ours to make.